Alright, Karina baby, for October the 29th, Green-Eyed Witches. Let's see the witches. Down in the woods, where the trees are bare and twigs screech, scratch, and tangle your hair, there in the light of the silver moon, the green-eyed witches sit and croon. In tattered capes and pointed hats, around the cauldron filled with bats, they fly on broomsticks way up high to sweep dark cobwebs from the sky and catch giant spiders from a brew. At Halloween, they might snatch you. Ooh. Karina baby, I love you so incredibly much. You have no idea how much I love you, baby. I miss you so much. Alright, so we are in the Voyage of Sinbad. And what did we learn about Sinbad so far? Sinbad has been on 3 voyages so far, and every single voyage he finds himself in a perilous situation where he thinks he's going to die. But he prevails every single time. He's like, I just need to eat, and I need to keep going, and I want to live. Only one time in this story so far has it said, okay, maybe right now, maybe I wouldn't want to live. One time out of many. This man is a survivor, and he keeps going. He keeps going. So today we're going to learn about the 4th voyage that Sinbad is going to be going on. Rich and happy as I was after my 3rd voyage, I could not make up my mind to stay at home altogether. My love of traveling and the pleasure I took in anything that was new and strange made me set my affairs in order and begin my journeying again. I took ship at a distant seaport, and for some time all went well. But at last, being caught in a violent hurricane, our vessel became a total wreck, and many of our company perished in the waves. I, with a few others, had the good fortune to be washed ashore, clinging to pieces of the wreck, for the storm had driven us near an island, and scrambling up beyond the reach of the waves, we threw ourselves down to wait for morning. At daylight we wandered inland, and soon saw some huts, to which we directed our steps. As we drew nearer, their inhabitants swarmed out in great numbers and surrounded us, and we were led to their houses, and you see the doggy on the bed? He's such a good boy. He loves me. I love him. He's such a good doggy, Karina. Led to our houses and divided among our captors, I with 5 others was taken into a hut, where we were made to sit upon the ground, and certain herbs were given to us, which our captors made signs for us to eat. Observing that they themselves did not touch them, I was careful only to pretend to taste my portion. But my companions, being very hungry, rashly ate all that was set before them, and very soon I had the honor of seeing them become perfectly mad. Though they chattered incessantly, I could not understand a word they said, nor did they heed when I spoke to them. The savages now produced large bowls full of rice, prepared with coconut oil, of which my crazy companions ate eagerly. But I tasted just a few grains, understanding clearly that the object of our captors was to fatten us speedily for their own eating. And this was exactly what happened. My unlucky companions, having lost their reason, felt neither anxiety nor fear, and ate greedily whatever was offered them. So they were soon fat, and there was an end to them. But I grew leaner day by day, for I ate but little, and even the little did me no good by reason of my fear what lay before me. However, as I was far from being a tempting morsel, I was allowed to wander about freely, and one day when the savages had gone off upon some expedition, leaving only an old man to guide me and guard me, I managed to escape from him and plunged into the forest, running faster and more the more he cried to me to come back, until I completely outdistanced him. For 7 days I hurried on, resting only when the darkness stopped me, and living chiefly upon coconuts, which afforded me both meat and drink. And on the 8th day I reached the seashore, and saw a party of men gathered pepper, which grew abundantly. I advanced towards them, and they greeted me in Arabic, asking who I was and where I came. My delight was great in hearing their familiar speech, and I willingly satisfied their curiosity, telling them how I had been shipwrecked and captured. But those savages devour men, they said. How did you escape? I repeat to them what I have just told you, and which they were mightily astonished. I stayed with them until they had collected as much pepper as they wished, and then they took me back to their own country and presented me to their king. To him also I had to relate my adventures, which surprised him much. And when I had finished, he ordered that I should be supplied with food and raiment, and treated with consideration. The island on which I found myself abundant in all sorts of disagreeable things, and a great deal of traffic went on in the capital, where I soon began to feel at home and contented. Moreover, the king treated me with special favor, and in consequence of this, everyone, whether at court or in town, sought to make life pleasant for me. This man is the luckiest, unluckiest man ever, right? Papa used to tell that to everyone about me all the time. He used to say I was the luckiest person, the most unluckiest luck, and it's true. This man has so much fortune, and yet he's almost dead all the time. Alright. And one thing I remarked, which I thought very strange, from the greatest to the least, all men rode their horses without bridle or straps. One day I presumed to ask his majesty why he did not use them, to which he replied, "You speak to me of things of which I have never before heard." This gave me an idea. I found a clever workman, and made him cut out, under my direction, a bridle rein, and the foundation of a saddle, which I waddled and covered with choice leather, adorning it with rich gold embroidery. I then had a locksmith make me a big stirrups and a pair of stirrups, after a pattern that I drew for him. And when these things were completed, I presented them to the king, and showed him how to use them. When I had saddled one of the horses, he mounted it and rode about, quite delighted with the novelty. And to show his gratitude, he rewarded me with many gifts. After this, I had to make saddles for all the principal officers and of the king's household, and as they gave me rich presents, I soon became very wealthy and quite an important person in the city. One day the king sent for me and said, "Sinbad, I am going to ask a favor of you. Both I and my subjects esteem you, and wish you to end your days among us. Therefore I desire you to marry a rich and beautiful lady. I will find for you, and think no more of your own country. As the king's will was law, I accepted the charming bride he presented to me and lived happily with her. Nevertheless, I had every intention of escaping at the first opportunity and going back to Baghdad. Oh, he had a beautiful wife. Things were thus going prosperously for me when it happened that the wife of one of my neighbors, with whom I had struck up quite a friendship, fell ill and presently died. I went to his house to offer my condolences and found him in the depths of woe. Heaven preserve you, said I, and send you a long life. Alas, he replied, what is the good of saying that when I have but an hour of life to live? Come, come, said I, surely it is not so bad as that, as all that. I trust that your life may be spared for many years. I hope, answered he, that your life may be long, and but as for me, all is finished. I have set my house in order, and today I shall be buried with my wife. This has been the law upon our island from the earliest ages, and living husbands go to the grave with his dead wife. The living wife with her dead husband. So did our fathers, and so must we do. The law changes not, and all must submit to it. As he spoke, the friends and relatives of the unhappy pair began to assemble. The body, decked in rich robes and sparkled with jewels, was laid upon the open bier, and the procession started, making its way to a high mountain at some distance from the city, and the wretched husband, clothed from head to foot in a black mantle, followed mournfully. When the burial place was reached, the corpse was lowered, just as it was, into a deep pit. Then the husband, bidding farewell to all his friends, scratched himself up another bier, on which he laid 7 little loaves of bread and a pitcher of water. And he was also let down to the depths of the horrible cavern. A stone was then laid over the opening, and the melancholy company wended its way back to the city. You may imagine that I was no unmoved spectator for those proceedings, and all the others were accustomed to it from their youth up. But I was so horrified that I could not help telling the king how it struck me. Sire, I said, I am more astonished than I can express to you at the strange custom which exists in your dominion of burying the living with the dead. In all my travels I have never before met with so cruel and horrible a law. What would you have, Sinbad? He replied. It is the law for everybody. I myself should be buried with the queen if she were the first to die. But your majesty, said I, dare I ask if the law applies to foreigners also? Why, yes, replied the king, smiling, in what I could but consider a very heartless manner. They are no exception to the rule if they have married in the country. From that time forward, my mind was never easy. If only my wife's little finger ached, I fancied she was going to die. And sure enough, before very long, she fell really ill, and within a few days she had breathed her last. My dismay was great, for it seemed that to be buried alive was even worse fate than to be devoured by cannibals. The body of my wife, arrayed in her richest robes and decked with all her jewels, was laid upon the bier. I followed it, and after me came a great procession, headed by the king and all of the nobles. And in this order, we reached the final mountain, the fatal mountain, one of the lofty chains bordering the sea. Here I made one of the frantic efforts to excite the pity of the king and those who stood by, hoping to save myself at this last moment. But it was of no avail. No one spoke to me, not even appeared to hasten over their dreadful task, and I speedily found myself descending into a gloomy pit, where my 7 loaves and a pitcher of water beside me. Almost before I reached the bottom of the stone, I was pulled into a place above my head. I was left to my fate. A feeble ray of light shone into the cavern through some chink, and when I had the courage to look about me, I could see that it was a vast I was in a vast vault, strewn with the bones of the dead. I even fancied that I heard the expiring sighs of those who, like myself, had come into the dismal place alive. All in vain did I shriek aloud in rage and despair, reproaching myself for the love of gain and adventure which had brought me to such a pass. But at length, growing calmer, I took up my bread and water, and wrapping my face in the mantle, groped my way towards the end of the cavern, where the air was fresher. Here I live in darkness and misery until my provisions were nearly exhausted. One day I fancied that I heard something near me which breathed loudly. Turning to the place from which the sound came, I dimly saw a shadowy form which fled at my movement, squeezing itself through a cranny in the wall. I pursued it as fast as I could and found myself in a narrow crank among the rocks, along which I was just able to force my way. I followed it for what seemed to me like many miles, and at last I saw before me a glimmer of light, which grew clearer every moment until I emerged upon the seashore with a joy which I cannot describe. When I was sure that I was not dreaming, I realized that it was doubtless some little animal that had found its way into the cavern from the sea, and when disturbed had fled, showing me a means of escape which I could never have discovered for myself. I hastily surveyed my surroundings and saw that I was safe from the pursuit from the town. The mountains sloped sheer down to the sea, and there was no road across them. Being assured of this, I returned to the cavern and amassed a rich treasure of diamonds, rubies, emeralds, jewels of all kinds, which were scattered over the ground. Those I made up into bales, stored them in a safe place upon the beach, and sat down and waited hopefully for the passing of a ship. I had looked out for 2 days, however, before a single sail appeared. So it was with my much delight that I at last saw a vessel not very far from the shore, and by waving my arms and uttering loud cries, succeeded in attracting the attention of the crew. A boat was set off to me, and in answer to the question of the sailors as to how I came to be in such a plight, I replied that I had been shipwrecked 2 days before, but had managed to scramble ashore with the bales which I pointed out to them. Luckily for me, they believed my story, and without even looking at the place where they found me, took up my bundles and rowed me back to the ship. Once on board, I soon saw that the captain was too much occupied with the difficulties of navigation to pay much heed to me, though he generously made me welcome, and would not even accept the jewels which with which I offered to pay my passage. Our voyage was prosperous, and after visiting my land and collecting in each place a great store of goodly merchants, I found myself at last in Baghdad again, more with unheard of riches of every description. Here Sinbad paused, and his audience took their leave, followed by Hindbad, who had once more received 100 pieces of gold, and with the rest had been bidden to return the next day for the story of the fifth voyage. When the time came, all were in their places, and when they had eaten and drank what was set before them, Sinbad began his tale. Tomorrow will be the fifth voyage, baby. Let's do. We sit and watch the rain as it falls from the sky, and we are glad to be inside where it is warm and dry. Oh yes, I do love the rain. It keeps the earth so clean and helps the pretty flowers grow from the mountains to the streams. A tisket, a tasket, a green and yellow basket. I sent a letter to my love, and on my way I lost it. I lost it, I lost it. A little boy picked it up and put it in his pocket. A tisket, a tasket, a green and yellow basket. Alright, baby, let's do Lila Tove. It's actually really late. Lila Tove, and good night to you. Lila Tove, may your dreams come true. We sing Lila Tove, may Israel protect you throughout the night until we reach the morning light. Baby, I love you and I miss you and I can't wait to see you. Like Papa always used to say, Mama's Papa's son, Papa's my moon, and you are my rainbow baby, and I love you. I love you so much, honey. Good night, baby.